On this episode of the NHL At the Rink podcast, we talked to Cam Janssen all about the Blues and the coaching change to Jim Montgomery. Sean and I dive into the mailbag to talk about what's wrong with the Rangers and what they could do to fix things. And we talk about what we are thankful for in this Thanksgiving week. All coming up on this episode of the NHL At the Rink podcast.
NHL At the Rink is presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
Welcome into the Thanksgiving week edition of the NHL At the Rink podcast, brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip. Sean, happy Thanksgiving. It's an early Thanksgiving. We're recording this on Tuesday. It's an early Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, and please keep the Christmas salad out.
No Christmas salad. I haven't even gone shopping yet, Dan. I got to get this over with so I can go shopping and start to cook. My favorite holiday of the year. Food, family, football, the whole thing. Hockey on Friday. You can't beat it.
No, you can't. Yeah, I like your priorities in order. Shopping, but, just get the podcast out of the way.
Yeah, let's get it rolling, baby.
Let's get it rolling. Anyway,
we have to get it rolling because we have a guest.
Yes.
Who gets it rolling. We have Cam Janssen on, the former NHL player who does the Cam and Strick podcast, based out of St. Louis. He's going to talk a lot about Montgomery and the changes in St. Louis. But that guy has energy to spare. He wants everybody to have energy to spare. So I'm ready. We already talked to him, so I'm fired up, Dan. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, he brings the energy that I can't wait. It was great to talk to him. I couldn't wait to talk to him because I knew he was going to bring the energy. That interview is going to be coming up here shortly. But obviously, we talked to Old Blues about him, so we got to get into this, Sean. Jim Montgomery, new coach of the St. Louis Blues. He 6 days after he coaches his last game, or 6 days after he coaches his last game or gets fired by the Boston Bruins, he's coaching for the St. Louis Blues at Madison Square Garden against the New York Rangers. They win 5-2 Monday night. We are recording this on Tuesday. I absolutely love this move by the St. Louis Blues, Sean. I absolutely love it. And I say that with all due respect to Drew Bannister, who was the coach who got fired. The Blues didn't hire Jim Montgomery because they were going in the wrong direction. They were flat, dead, all those things. They weren't very good. They were 9-12-1. They hired Jim Montgomery because a guy became available to coach their team who they wanted and felt was a better option than the coach they already had. And Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen went out and said, this guy is great. He's who we want. And he's who we want long-term. And he's who we want to build us through this reset we're going to where we're going to be a Stanley Cup contender again. And he's not going to be available for very much longer. Let's get him. And so they went out and got him. And I think Drew Bannister can be a coach in this league. Think about Bruce Cassidy, Sean. He had his cup of coffee there with the Washington Capitals, had to go back to the AHL, coach the Providence Bruins, gets a chance behind the Boston Bruins bench, goes to the Stanley Cup final with them, wins the Stanley Cup with Vegas. He's a great coach now. Could that be Drew Bannister? Perhaps. But Jim Montgomery is a more experienced, better option right now, and they went out and got him. And I think it's a great move, and I love that they did it.
Dan, would you like me to cook you Thanksgiving dinner, or would you like Chris Santos of Beauty and Essex to cook you Thanksgiving dinner?
I would, well, since you're going to bring a Christmas salad, Sean, I'm going with Chris Santos. But no, I get your point, 100%.
Of course you would. You take the best out there. It's all about assets, right? Like we talk about players all the time. It's the same thing with coaches. You can have a good coach, and then you can have a great coach. Like Montgomery's done nothing but win in this league. Everywhere he's been. And he was winning at like a 75% rate with the Bruins. Like it's a freak occurrence that he was made available. And the Bruins knew it when they did it. Like everybody's like, oh, the Bruins, they keep getting rid of these really good coaches. Like they feel like they have to. It's not like they don't know that they're good. But even good coaches sometimes lose rooms. It happens all over the place. You just talked about Cassidy winning the Cup in Vegas. It wasn't that he wasn't as good a coach in Boston. His message wasn't getting across anymore. And once that happens, you're done. And I don't care how good an X and O coach you are.
Well, you're 100% right, and it's also different in a situation like the Boston Bruins are in right now, when it becomes obvious that a good coach, and Montgomery obviously is a very good coach, loses the room. They're not in a reset. They're not in a rebuild. You can't wait it out, right? You can't bring in young guys, bring them up, and change things out. They're in a must-win mode right now. They're in a window where they have to go and win. So it adds the pressure, and then that mounts, and a change becomes required. The St. Louis Blues were not in that position. Montgomery, even at Madison Square Garden in the morning, in his morning press conference, basically said, "We come with no expectations." Right? And that's the thing. That the only expectation that he said they do have is to play what he calls blue-collar hockey, Blues hockey. Get back to playing that. Make the fans proud of this team. And if they can do that, they'll win some games. Are they going to be great? Listen, they have a ways to go. We'll get into a little bit more of that with Cam Janssen, right? But the expectations are a little bit lower in St. Louis. They can make this move. It's a 5-year deal. They can grow and build, and Monty can grow and build with them. So it's different in Boston than it is in St. Louis. And I don't think in St. Louis it's that Drew Bannister lost the room. I think it's just simply the fact that what we were talking about. A better guy, a better, more experienced coach at this present time became available.
How did Monty get the job in St. Louis without ever talking to Army? No expectations?
Well,
low expectations? What kind of conversation was that, dude?
I think he might be managing expectations. How about that? Could he be managing them? Perhaps. Listen, Armstrong.
If he got through that conversation and there were no expectations put down by Army, somebody better check on him.
I don't think there were any expectations put down by Doug Armstrong in terms of you must win, we must make the playoffs, we are a playoff team, all of those things. The expectations are, let's build this thing back up. That's where they're at, right? And how do you do that? You get back in, you talk to the players, you reconnect with them. And Sean, that's the other thing about this. He comes into a team, he coached 15 of those guys that are on the team right now, played at least a handful of games for the Blues, and many played a lot more than that when Jim Montgomery was an assistant coach. He has prior relationships here. There is already a respect for him beyond what he's done as a coach in this league. There is a personal respect for him. It's a different coaching change than what we've seen. Normally, you see a coach come in and he may know a smattering of the players. Maybe he coached one or two of them, and those are the guys that are going to kind of, the other guys will lean on and be like, all right, what do we expect here? What do we expect here? These guys know, for the most part, Jim Montgomery. It's a different type of coaching change. He can come in and just reconnect relationships rather than make relationships.
Yeah, and it's the same thing in Boston, right? Like, they replaced him with Sacco, and he was the associate coach there, and he knows everybody, and now it's his job to build the Bruins up. I mean, it's a small sample size, 2 games, but they've won. They haven't scored a lot, but they haven't given up anything. And maybe that's their blueprint. It scares me that they can't score. It scares me that the Blues can't score, and the coach of the Bruins, who couldn't score, is now the coach of the Blues. But they looked pretty good last night against the Rangers. So we'll see. I'm waiting to see in Boston what happens when they start playing some better teams and where they're going to be long term.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, there's talent there with the Boston Bruins. We know that they've got to put it together, and maybe a couple of low-scoring, one-goal games helps them fuel a little confidence. But you mentioned we were talking about the Blues, and again, we're gonna have Cam Janssen on here in a little bit. Talk more about the Blues and Jim Montgomery taking over. But the team they played at Madison Square Garden, Sean, the New York Rangers, they're struggling. I got a question about them for my weekly mailbag. That comes out Wednesday. So let's dive into the mailbag, and this part of the podcast is brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip. So we'll open the mailbag, Sean, and I am touching on the New York Rangers. It's been a struggle. This is a team that, listen, they're 12-7-1. Let's not go crazy here, but they've lost 3 in a row. They've allowed 40 shots on goal or more in each of those games, and they're recurring problems with breakouts, with turnovers, with, disconnected players, with forwards too far away from defensemen. And now the report comes out from Elliot Friedman on Monday, and it's been confirmed in a lot of different places. Chris Drury is looking to shake things up. He wants to make some trades. The names out there are Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba. Oh, man, Sean, in a perfect world, you could trade them both, right? And you can get guys back who are going to make an impact on your team, and away you go, and everything's better. That's not how this works. Is this just message sending from Chris Drury? Or is this, legit? He can trade Chris Kreider. He can trade Jacob Trouba. Or are we just trying to send a message to the rest of this team hey, this isn't good enough?
No, I think he can trade anybody, and I think you do both. Right now, you've opened your door for business, and let's hear what's out there. You've sent a message to your team, but if this, first of all, I'm as big a critic of the Rangers as anybody. What's wrong with why is there something wrong with them? They hit a little bump in the road. They're win percentage wise, I think they're still ahead of the Devils. All they got to do is get in. And to me, if you're a playoff team and you have legitimate playoff aspirations, you're going to trade Kreider? That cat's built for the playoffs. He might as well put the regular season away and just show up for the playoffs.
And there's the rub with it, right? So on the surface, I'll tell you that these problems the Rangers have had in the last 3 games, they go way deeper. They've won a lot of games this season where their goalie has bailed them out, where they've gotten outshot, and they haven't beaten a lot of good teams. In fact, they beat the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that was very earlier in the season. But otherwise, the better teams in the league, they've pretty much lost to them. It hasn't been they've had a somewhat of a soft schedule, and they've kind of made good on that through the first 20 games of the season, but they haven't really beaten the good teams. And now you see them losing, 6-2 to Edmonton, a good team, no doubt. You see them losing 5-2 to St. Louis, a team that's below 500. The rub is you look to trade Chris Kreider. Okay, I understand it, Sean. I get it from a perspective of the Rangers. You want to shake up and all that, but you're not trading Chris Kreider for a draft pick. You're not trading him for a prospect. You have to trade him, if you're trading him, to get an impact player back in your lineup. And to me, the only real way to do that is if it's a blockbuster trade, which is great. I actually had somebody stop me at Madison Square Garden on my way up to the press box last night before the game against the Blues, and he was talking to me about could they do a blockbuster for Brady Tkachuk. And it's to me, that's a hard stop if I'm the Ottawa Senators, and it is for Travis Green too. I'm sure you saw the quotes from Green. We had a story up from Callum Fraser, our guy in Ottawa, trade Brady Tkachuk. You got to be out of your mind. But that's where the mind goes. If you're going to trade Chris Kreider, he's not an elite 5-on-5 player, but he is an elite guy on the power play, and he's a really good penalty killer, and he's an impact guy on your team, and your team is supposed to be a Stanley Cup contender. If you trade him, you've got to get an impact guy in return. And that's what makes that's not an easy trade to make, Sean.
It's almost impossible to make because you're dealing from a position of weakness. You're most likely dealing with the older player. When you talk to forget how silly it is. I was trying to find a good word to use there, and I don't want to insult anybody. So how silly it is to think about trading Brady Tkachuk because he took a couple of penalties. That's where this came from. He took 21 minutes in penalties because they were losing to Vancouver, and he was unhappy. Good for him. 7 other people should have took 21 minutes in penalties and showed they were unhappy too. Why is it just your captain doing that? And now you want to run him out of town on a rail? And then their GM is going to be like, oh, you know what would fix our growing team? A really old Chris Kreider. We'll take one of our young pieces. And look, they've talked about, there's been all kinds of talk about how if this Ottawa team doesn't take the next step, it's not going to be management that pays the price, right? Travis Green's new, everything else. It's going to be a foundational shakeup with one of their young players because they've had this young group for a long time, and it's not working and they're going to have to move one of them. But for Chris Kreider, and that's what the fans think. Well, we can take our player that we no longer like, who we think's not worth a bag of pucks, and we could trade him to this other team who's got a sucker for a GM, and he'll give us their best player. Everybody would make that deal.
Yeah, of course they would. And listen, I would never trade Brady Tkachuk. Never. Unless Brady Tkachuk came to me and said, get me out of here. This isn't working. I'm done. I'm not going to play for you anymore. That's not going to happen either. He's too big of a competitor. He's too prideful of a guy. And he wants to make it work in Ottawa. So, no, I would never, ever, let me repeat, never trade a player like Brady Tkachuk. You are losing that trade if you trade Brady Tkachuk. No matter who you get, you are losing that trade. Unless you're getting Connor McDavid back, all right? Austin Matthews back. You're losing the trade, okay? So let's be clear there. The Chris Kreider situation is interesting, though. The Rangers situation, it's not just Kreider, it's Trouba. Kreider's got 2 years left, plus this one too, at $6.5 million. Trouba's got 1 year left, including plus this one at $8 million. It's a hard trade to make. The Rangers have to find a way to improve right now within. If it's going to happen, that's going to happen with their top guys improving, because they can't keep relying on Kaapo Kakko and Will Cooley to be difference makers for them. It's great that they are, but you can't rely on those two good guys. But again, let me repeat, Sean. I'm going to just to be clear. I would never trade Brady Tkachuk, who is a St. Louis guy, by the way.
The help's arrived for the Rangers before we get to all the St. Louis guys and Cam Jansen. The help arrived last night. Everybody was focused on Matt Rempe. Who else came up, Dan?
Brett Berard had a nice play.
That's the answer.
He's a Rhode Island
good Rhode Island boy from Bishop Hendricken. He's the answer. No, he looked really good last night, dude. I know it's one game, but he looked good.
Yeah, he brings energy. He brings offense. He did look good, but they got bigger issues there. Matt Rempe, by the way, was sent down by the Rangers to Hartford today. Chad Ruhwedel was recalled, so Rempe gets in a game. Penalties, doesn't do that well. Sent back to Hartford. We'll see where that goes. We did actually ask Cam Jansen about Matt Rempe, but before that, we talked all about Jim Montgomery going to St. Louis, the impact that has on the Blues. Can this Blues team be like the team in 2019? Jansen answers that question more. Here's our interview with Cam Jansen. Cam, thanks so much for joining us. So before we get started on all the hockey talk we got to get to, how you doing? Everything all right with you?
Yeah, everything's okay, except for my little kitty cat Boo died, who I've had for 17 years through a lot of ups and downs, and that devastated me. She died a couple weeks ago. And listen, before you chirp, if you're an animal lover, you'll understand. And a lot of people aren't cat lovers, but I've always had cats my whole life. And I got this little kitty right before I got traded to the Blues, and she passed away a couple weeks ago. So to answer your question, no, I'm a little down and out.
Dude, I get it. Our cat just passed to Snoopy. My kids have had her whole life. My son named her. Of course, a cat named Snoopy, but yeah, it's tough, man.
Yeah, it is tough, but you got to get over it. You get another one. It is what it is. Other people are going through a lot worse things, but you asked, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, no, listen, I've lost a pet myself. It's never easy. I'm not going to chirp on that. Look, let's get to it. The Blues play one game with Jim Montgomery as their coach. What did you think? Is this a revamped team? Is this a new team? Is one game enough?
No, they're not going to lose another game the rest of the year. No, man, look, they needed a shakeup. Listen, it's been tough for this organization for the past couple years. Okay, they win the Cup in 19, a freak thing. It all came together at the right time. You're rocking and rolling the next year, by the way. And people are like, well, what happened after the Stanley Cup? Where'd the downfall come from? I'm thinking, okay, let's look at it. They were dominant, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and then you go into the bubble. They weren't there mentally. They get beat by Vancouver, I believe, where Quinn Hughes was just dominating. And then, the next year, you make it to the second round against the Colorado Avalanche, who end up winning the Cup. Kadri goes in. Bennington's playing out of his mind, bumps into Benner. He gets hurt. Things collapse, and then things collapse more. And now here we are, two coaches later, and Jim Montgomery coming back to St. Louis. So I think the excitement is here. You could see how some of the young guys like that Zachary Bolduc played last night, play with confidence. What does that mean in the next 3 games? I don't know. I'll tell you this right now. They got some tough games coming up. You got the Devils tomorrow night. Then I'm going on the road trip doing radio with the guys. This Western swing we have to do starting in Winnipeg. That's going to be tough. So there's still some games ahead where they need to see really where they're at. But last night was certainly a positive note. And you could tell Jim Montgomery just has a feel for things. Like he just does. And I know the guy personally too. I was here in St. Louis when Monty got fired from Dallas, right? Had that run, went through some stuff, got out of it. And then he came back to St. Louis and coached his kid. And all the alumni were skating with each other because we have this alumni skating. And he started coming out. We're talking to him. And he kind of got in the mix. And all of a sudden, he gets hired, does well. Penalty kill power play was great as assistant coach. And, you know, then he gets an offer with the Boston Bruins and did extremely well there. So it's a one big circle, more of a figure eight than anything with Jim Montgomery in St. Louis. But here we are. And last night, the boys look pretty dang good.
Is the coach's bump real? I mean, you played, you went through it, you know, and everybody says, oh, it's good for a little while. Sometimes it's good for longer than a little while. Like, what is it a clean slate? Do you actually believe that as a player?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yep. 100% clean slate. And yeah, the bump, it's real and it's not real. You know, like you gotta still be consistent. The hardest thing about hockey is to be consistent. It really is. So as a coach, for me, like I would like guys that just keep you motivated. Everybody's going to play as hard as they can, but some guys, they kind of give you 70%, which maybe they can give you 80%. You can't go 100% every single game. It's such a grind. It's impossible. We all know that. But if you could bump some guys up, maybe 5 or 7% as far as their energy level or their motivation or whatever, and for a coach to be able to do that with guys, like that makes a big difference. He seems like that kind of guy. That's easy to talk to. If you talk to him, he's easy to talk to. If you saw him last night on the bench, he's talking to the guys, he's doing this, he's doing that. I mean, they didn't just dominate the whole game. I mean, they had a great game, but at the beginning, the Rangers were on them. They scored first, and they had to regroup and figure things out. So I like coaches that talk to you. Monty also has this little like phone, like he'll text different groups of guys on the team, not to mention another text chain with everybody, and just keeps everybody up to date with what his mindset is. I don't mind that. You know what I don't like? I don't like when coaches walk past you and don't even say hi. That's what I don't like. I've had coaches walk past me. I'm like, oh God, what'd I do? Oh geez. Now my brain's racing. I'm like, oh God, am I going to sit down? No, like we're all grown men and tough and whatnot, but like that plays with you.
You know, it's interesting because Monty did say yesterday that, you know, he's a big TikTok guy, and he'll scroll through in his spare time, and if he sees something that will connect with a player or players or the team, he'll send it out in whatever various text group that he feels it should go to. So that to me also said he's modern. He's with it. He understands the players. He knows, you know, things that the players are looking at maybe themselves, and he can relate to the players. And what was interesting too, Cam, and you tell me as a former player, he is a coach who's very vocal. You could see it on the bench, but he was talking to guys at the morning skate, one-on-ones, talking to lines, connecting with guys. What does that do for a player when the team is really, I mean, listen, struggling? It was 9-12-1, right? What does that do for a player when a new coach comes in and he's immediately embracing the guys and talking with them, whether he has prior relationships with them or not?
I would say if I do something well, whether it's in practice or a game, and I make just a little play, I got it off the wall well, and I made a little sauce pass to the middle where our centerman came out quick, and I go back to the bench, and he's like, good job, that's all I need. Just something. Give me something. Yeah. I know I'm a grown man. I get all that, but we're all human. I need you to pump me up. I need confidence. Confidence is such a big thing, not only in hockey, but in life in general. If you're a boss that you're running some sort of company, like I would want my boss to pump my tires up just to let me know that you saw what I did well. Now I'm like, okay, I like that. Lou Lamoriello used to do that to me. And I would do something, and after a game, he'd just give me a tap on the butt when I walked on the bus in front of everybody. Just a little tap on the butt. That's all I needed. Now, when he didn't do that, I'm like, oh boy, Uh-oh, what did I do? Okay, like but you can't be, hey, happy go lucky every day. Like, you got to put your foot down too. We've seen that when he coached Boston. He'll call you out. So if everything's like roses and gumball drops, yay, everything's fun. No, no, no. You start slipping, and you start, your energy level and your passion isn't there. Then you know what? He's going to call you out. So you better remember that too. So, as long as you keep playing hard, he wants to play blue collar hockey. I know that's somewhat of a cliche. I get what he's saying. You go and you throw pucks on net and you stick up for each other like they did in New York when Matt Rempe is literally running around crushing guys. My God. But, even you see Joel Hofer kind of bumping into Shesterkin, like, okay, what's up? Like, I'm not Benner. Like, okay, we're here. Let's go. So just little things like that. Keep that passion up. But it's nice to have a coach that recognizes even the little things you do well.
Cam, is there a different type of gravitas for a coach like Berube, right? Who was a player and was a tough player, and you knew what you were getting as a player. Like, you're probably afraid of him. And then a coach who's not that way, but has almost unrivaled success. I mean, you look at Monty in Boston, it's like 120 and 40.
He still played. He played on line with Holy here,
Yeah, no, I understand, but it's a different kind of, right? Like
you're right.
Berube was like, oh my God, I remember seeing that guy just kill people. I'm going to get in line because I know what's waiting for me, and there's a lot of hard-nosed players like that. Like Brindamore is one of those players, and they're coaches now. But then there's a guy who comes in and, like I said, is just like an X and O guy. And everywhere he's been winning at over 600%. Like, is there a different kind of gravitas to that you can look at and say, he's our guy now?
Of course. Berube, of course, has his swag. You see him, you think of him, you look at him, and he's such a down-to-earth, cool guy to where that helps his personality. But don't get me wrong. There's still coaches that played 1,000 games in the NHL that don't know how to connect to the players. And so that 1,000 games you played only goes so far if you don't know how to interact on a day-to-day basis and get the most out of the guys. Or you act like, hey, I played 1,000 games. None of you have on my team. I'm better. That kind of attitude. Like, players judge attitudes. They do. You have to have that right balance. You really, really do. How do you do that? It's tough. It's tough. It truly is. Just like anything you do, there's always a balance to it. So you could play 2,000 games. Hell, well, how about look at Wayne Gretzky? I love him.
Yep.
The coolest cat in the world. Nicest can be. It didn't work with him. How did that not work? He's the best of the best. How can that just automatically work? Well, there's reasons for it. It just didn't connect. Now, I wasn't in there, but we've interviewed guys on the podcast like George LaRock to this and that. They've all had different queries of what happened with him, but it just didn't work. So if you take that and you're like, okay, Gretzky couldn't do it, but Monty, who only played maybe 120 games, he just found a way. He had enough time in those situations where he's like, this is what I would want a coach to teach me. I'm going to do the same.
Does it matter to a player that your coach got a 5-year deal?
That's a good question, dude. I would say it might matter to like maybe one of the assistant coaches that thought that he might want to be a head coach. But no. I think that I would say that if I'm a player, I'm like, okay, this is what we have. All right. Now, he could get fired in a couple of years. We see that trend going on in the NHL, but I'm saying that's probably not going to happen. They're going to be committed to Monty one way or the other. But if I'm a player, I'm like, okay, this is what we got. We got to work with it. I got to do what I got to do. Maybe I don't like a little portion of what he says or does. You know what? As a player, I got to deal with that. You're the one making good money. You're the one that has to prove to him every single day, you better deal with it. And in life as a whole, anywhere you work, you're always going to deal with somebody that you're just not 100% comfortable with. Deal with it, find a way, and everything else works out. But if you keep complaining and poor me, like that's in any case in life, you can't do that. So the 5-year deal, I'm like, the guy's like, good, we're with him. Let's do what we got to do.
What do they have to do? What do the Blues have to do going forward to be the team that Army thinks they are?
Score more goals, score, special teams, a little bit of everything. How about find an identity? Have passion every single night, be more consistent, all that. It's not just one thing. It's a bunch of little things. Like, you just got to be better at so many different things. And what we saw last night, like, they were in control. They were in control of the game. They really were. They never kind of got down and out. Things were going on. They kept their emotions up, but they threw pucks on that, not wasted pucks, not just I'm going to throw it and it's going to get blocked, and now they're coming down on a 2-on-1. No. Find ways, find lanes. And listen, all these guys are skilled. Every single team has skilled guys. Who has the most energy every night? Seriously. Because a stacked team that doesn't, it kind of is like, we've been doing this, I'm kind of bored. And you have a Utah team come in and they're like, I'm motivated tonight, let's go. They're going to win, or they're going to keep it competitive. So keeping that emotion alive is the start, in my opinion. But building confidence with these young guys, and if the young guys are playing well, then the older guys are like, wait a minute, why is he getting more power play time? Oh, yeah, now there's competition, baby. Let's go. Competition's healthy. That's what you want to create.
So in your mind, then you have all that. You look for all that. You want to create that, everything. What's a realistic expectation for the ceiling for this team right now? Monty talked about it. He goes, I don't know the ceiling, right? I don't know the team enough. You know the team. Like what's realistic? This is a team. People look at this, Cam, and I ask that question because people will look at this and be like, well, the Blues made a coaching change in late November and got Craig Berube, and they won the Stanley Cup, right? And they didn't have elite, game-breaking talent on that team, but they found a way, and the goaltender got hot, and everything was great. And they look at this team and are like, well, I mean, it could be similar. I mean, what's the ceiling for this team? Is it similar?
Well, not to 2019. Like, let's be realistic. All right. And, I don't want to bash. Cam said they're not going to win a cup. They could make me look foolish then. You know what I mean? I'm going to have to be on a plane for 5 hours to these guys in a couple of days. Like, it is what it is. But, I got to be real. They're not 2019. 2019, a lot of people, pundits in Canada and all over the place, like, no, this team is legit. This year, that wasn't the case.
Right.
So they needed it. I know they didn't have superstars, legit hot Hall of Famers. Maybe Petro might be on the 2019, but look at their lineup, dude. They were loaded. They were deep, and they were heavy and mean, and their defense were big and mean, and Benner got hot. Like, that's how you win. Like, you have to have all those intangibles to win the Stanley Cup anyway. So they had that. They just had to put it together. This year, I would say, I would just squeak in. I know you're in the Central Division. You got some teams playing well. Winnipeg doesn't lose. Minnesota's doing great. Colorado's figuring it out, although, they had a little mix-up the other night. Their goalie situation's goofy. But you have some competition in the Central Division. So all I look at, I just want to see an improvement, not a little improvement, a big improvement. And if that's if you improve enough to where the fans in this town at the end of this year are like, let's go, they might squeak in. Like, that's what I want. And if they do, and you could do some damage with a hot goalie and figure things out, and some of the young kids figure it out as well, then now I'm like, okay, now we're rocking and rolling. But for me to say, like, oh, they should win the whole thing, like, come on.
Cam, I got to ask you brought it up a little bit earlier, and it's such a big topic of conversation here all the time. What do you think of the Matt Rempe experience?
I like him. He looked goofy last night, though. You can't do stupid things like hitting Nathan Walker. He doesn't have the puck. You could have killed him. Hey, you're lucky, Rempe, that you didn't get dinged for that. I know they had a little hearing, and they're like, it wasn't that hard. But don't avoid that, because you were pretty good the rest of the game. You hit a couple of maybe it wasn't Nathan Walker, right in front of the benches. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
But he did make another
neighbor,
Jakey Boy Neighbors, who I love, by the way. He's a tough kid who's playing well. So like I saw that, I'm like, oh, dude, like, come on. You can't do that, man. You're lucky you didn't get dinged. You're gigantic. You really could have hurt him. And if you would have just elbowed him a little bit, you would have been gone for 7 games. You'd have been sit back down. Do you want to play at Hartford, dude? Do you? You like playing in Hartford, making that American League money or whatever it is? I don't even know what his contract situation is, but you can't be one and done, man. Don't just have 15 minutes of fame. You're a big kid. You can move around. Just find ways to do great things with the puck. Always get it out of the zone, but don't put yourself in a stupid scenario where you hit a guy weird when he doesn't have the puck, when it's unnecessary. You catch a guy on a forecheck a little bit weird. Hey, man, that's a hockey play. You went in, you're trying to disrupt, get some ozone time. But that crap, what I saw in front of the benches, actually pissed me off. But you can't do that kind of stuff. You got to smarten up a little bit.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. I'm glad Sean brought it up because I was going to bring it up with you too. I wanted to get your opinion on him. To me, Matt Rempe and the player like that, if he can skate, there's place for him in the game, right? But then
Yes.
you do something like that, and it kind of ruins it for the other guys too. Like the other guys who are trying to make a name for themselves, who are big physical guys like that. I mean, he's maybe a unicorn in terms of his size and everything like that. But there still should be, I would imagine you agree with me, a place in the game, in a speed skill game, for guys like that who can be real impact players as long as they're not doing that stuff, right?
It's not even about the fighting.
Yeah.
Can you hit consistently and disrupt plays where people fear you and they throw the puck up the boards and you cause turnovers? That's it. Stay out of the box. Don't be a skating 2-minute minor. You know what the bench does when you do something stupid like that? Their heads go down like blah, deflated. I didn't take the I hit guys weird, and I don't want to, but I never like took tripping calls. I never tried to like. I just didn't get like stupid 2-minute penalties because I just knew my teammates would be like, oh God, now the best players on the team have to go out there and rip shots against them and block shots, which are, you're rolling the dice every time you block a shot anyway. Now you take a dumb penalty. The best players have to go out there, stop, start, pucks flying at them 100 miles an hour. It wears you out, man. It deflates you. Smarten up.
Cam, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We know you're busy with your podcast, which is fantastic. Why don't you give a little plug and we'll let you go.
Well, it's called the Cam and Strick Podcast. We just had Danny Boyle on. Remember Danny Boyle? Great guy.
Good metalhead, Cam.
Yeah. Oh, really? I didn't even get into that. You should have told me that a couple days ago. But he's got some great stories. Anytime you play 1,000 games like that, there's always, you play with so many different guys. There's just stories out the wazoo. So check that out. Although it is rated R. So if your children in the car, don't listen to it. Okay. I can't cater to 9-year-olds. My bad.
That's our demographic, Cam. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Talk soon.
Sean, as we said at the top, the energy, great energy from Cam Janssen and great insight and information too. Love having him on. He's our Blues guy. He's our go-to Blues guy.
And there's a lot of them there. And for fans who don't know Cam Janssen and don't remember him from his playing career, go on YouTube, do yourself a favor, go on YouTube, watch some highlights, and you will see where that energy comes from. He was a part of some really good Devil teams, and he brought it every night. He had a small role, but he brought it every night. He was one of my favorite players to watch because he overcame such long odds to make it. He was one of the first St. Louis guys to ever make it. And if you look at his path to the NHL, it's everything he talked about. Just grinding every day and never taking no for an answer. Dude, I am literally ready to run through a wall right now.
I hope our listeners are too, but maybe, they can wait about 15 or 20 minutes before they do it. So finish out, this episode. And listen, hey, he was, I love the story he told about Lou Lamoriello, just giving him a little tap on the butt. That's how he knew. That's how he knew he did something right. And when he didn't get the tap, oh boy, that didn't go over that well in his mind, right? But let's stick with the coach's theme that we're on here. Also, a small little sliver, tangentially to St. Louis still. The Toronto Maple Leafs with Craig Berube, obviously the coach who led the Blues to the Stanley Cup Championship in 2019. Sean, the Leafs are 7-1 without Austin Matthews. Beyond that, they are scoring 3.13 goals per game without arguably the best goal scorer in the league right now. He's still out of the lineup, out 8 games now. But beyond that, Sean, it's the Berube effect in Toronto. His first year there, and this team is defending well. They're getting quality goaltending, but they are defending so well. Look at this number, 2.48 goals against per game. Second in the National Hockey League right now as we talk. 83.6% on the penalty kill. 7th. Came in, he said we have to keep the puck out. We have to focus on defending. Let our defense turn into offense. They're still scoring over 3 a game, but if the Leafs are going to score at 3 a game and they can keep the puck, they're going to be a very dangerous team. This looks like a really different, dangerous Toronto Maple Leafs team.
They look like a playoff team. They play
Finally.
like a playoff team. They play like a team that you don't want to see in the playoffs, right? You always want to see the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs because they're going to run and gun. And if you could match them, if you had the pieces like the Bruins always did to match them, you're going to win because they're going to open up. And your skill players are going to bury their skill players. I don't think that's the case anymore. I don't know if it lasts till the end of the year, but like I look at their roster and I don't know how they're doing it. I mean, I do. It's Berube, and he's making players play outside of their comfort zones. But like you look at the offense first guys there, and you're like, they've never been able to play defense, and now all of a sudden they are.
I mean, it's a 4-line 3D pair effect, right? And I think there's a situation there in Toronto where everybody knows their role and is willing to is not just accepting their role, but they're trying to thrive in their role, right? Listen, this is a different thing, but I just did a story with Matt Cullen. He's going into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. That story's going to run over the weekend or next week. And one thing Matt Cullen was telling me was that early in his career, he came in, he was an offensive guy. He wanted to be an offensive guy. He thought he was a number one center, and that's the way he tried to play, and he never really was. He never became that number one center. He was never a 30-goal scorer. He was never more than 49 points in a season. So his first 7 seasons were through Anaheim and Florida. He never really embraced the type of player he was supposed to be in this league. Then, once he embraced the role, he said, I'm going to be the best I can be at the role I'm supposed to play. And then he became a top middle six forward who could produce, who could defend, who could win faceoffs, kill penalties, do all the little details, become a coach's dream, right? So I bring that back to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They have guys now who are embracing their roles. And not only are they embracing their roles, they're thriving in their roles. They're trying to be the best they could possibly be in their role. And on top of that, Mitch Marner has been elite. John Tavares is producing offense again. William Nylander, we know how good he is. He's playing well, and they're getting great goaltending. So you put that all together, you get a team that's going to be successful and play like a playoff team. The Leafs have been a playoff team, but they have never played like a team that you would expect to win in the playoffs. That's the Berube effect. That's why they brought him in. That's why he is the coach of this team now, not because they lacked regular season success in the past. It's because they're building towards something bigger, and they have to adopt those principles right now and try to be the best in their role right now.
Yeah, and I think the other comparison is to Steve Yzerman, right? Like for some of their really skilled players, it's how many points do you want to score or how many cups do you want to win? Right. And Yzerman had to have that conversation with Bowman, and he had to listen, and then they won. And he was never a 100-point player again, but it didn't matter. And Scott Stevens is another example, right? Like the NHL is littered with examples of guys finally having the light bulb go off and say, I can rewrite record books, I can be a superstar, but I'll never get what I want. For me to get what I want, I need to subjugate myself to the team. It's always been that way in the NHL.
Yeah.
And I think Berube has, as we talked about with Cam, the gravitas to tell somebody, this is what you need to do to win. I'm a winner. I'm going to tell you how to win.
And now Auston Matthews can come back in the lineup whenever he does, and he doesn't have to be a savior coming back into the lineup. He can be a player, just play his role. Be the best you can be in your role, and he'll fit right in with what the Leafs are doing. Ironically, Sean, the New Jersey Devils are playing this way too. And the former coach of the Maple Leafs is the coach of the Devils, and Sheldon Keefe. They've been really good too. And they're keeping the puck out of the net. They're generating offense. They're getting quality goaltending. Their special teams have been terrific. They're beating good teams. They're 10-3 in the last month. And they've beaten Vancouver, Edmonton, Florida twice, Carolina, and Washington. And in 9 of those 13 games, they allowed 2 goals or fewer, including a game against Carolina that I went to at the Rock last week. And they were just flat out better than the Hurricanes in that game. The Hurricanes were on a back-to-back, but they were just flat out better than them.
It's amazing what a healthy defense can do, right? And the fact that they've added goaltenders that are established and that there's some confidence in, but they've been able to reimagine their whole defense because everybody's gotten healthy. Dougie Hamilton's healthy, and they brought in Pesci, and they're able to and Dylan, so they're able to move things around, and guys are able to play where they belong. Luke Hughes isn't getting his lunch fed to him,
right?
Because he has to play up.
Simone Nemec is in the AHL.
Yeah, Siegenthaler, and he was the number 2 defenseman last year.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you have the pieces, you're a much better coach, right? And I think that the Devils had a lot of the pieces last year, and they weren't good because they couldn't stop a puck, and their defense was in over its head, and they fixed that. Fitzgerald, their GM, fixed all of it. He went out and got goaltenders, made it a priority. He redid the defense, and he let their offense speak for itself. And he brought in a little sandpaper, right? And Nason and Cotter and guys like that. And, you watched them play Nashville last night, and Nashville's not a great team. They're struggling to find it, but they're a big physical team at times, and the Devils can't beat them. I think it's like 2009 was the last time that they beat the Predators. They just give them fits. And part of it is because they play a big, heavy game. And now the Devils are built to withstand it and to initiate it. And then to top it all off, you get Nico with the hat trick.
Yeah, no, listen. And you know what I love, too? They're living up to expectations, right? Their expectations were high going into the season. They were not a playoff team last year. They were They were a middling team, a lot of injuries, changed coaches the midseason last year, Lindy Ruff to Travis Green. It did not go well. And they made additions. Markstrom, Allen, obviously. Last season they got Allen, Markstrom in the offseason. Nason was a great addition. Other guys as well. Pesci for sure. Dylan for sure. And expectations soared for the New Jersey Devils. Can they win the Metro? Can they be the best team in that division? They got to be a playoff team. No doubt about it, right? Well, it's not easy to live up to expectations when you're throwing pieces together that have never played before, bringing in new guys who have never been a part. Look at the Nashville Predators. They're the perfect example of that, right? Expectations were high there, and that team is really struggling right now. Expectations were high in New Jersey, and they're living up to it. They're playing the way they were built to play, and that is. I think there's a lot to be said for that, Sean, the way they're doing it right now. And in a way, Toronto is as well.
So I got a question for you before we move on to Thanksgiving and what we're thankful for. Well, 2 things. One, I'm still curious. You speak of new coaches. I'm still curious if Lindy Ruff is going to have that effect in Buffalo. They keep vacillating, and I might be back on the Buffalo bandwagon. I know our boss, Bill Price, he's thankful for Lindy Ruff because they're starting to win again. But I have a hat trick question for you, Dan.
Okay.
If you're at a game,
right.
If you're at a game, no, there's no right or wrong. If you're at a game and you've borrowed somebody's hat to go to the game, and somebody scores a hat trick, do you throw that hat on the ice?
Yes. They gave me the hat. They gave me the hat, fully aware that if a hat trick is scored, the protocol is to send the hat onto the ice. Yes, I have to throw the. It's protocol. It's National Hockey League protocol. If my team scores a hat trick, and I am wearing a hat, I have to send that hat onto the ice. That's in the ticket. Actually, I think it's in the fine print of when you buy the ticket that you have to do that. So yes, 100%. And why do you ask?
Because the boy went to the Nashville game last night against the Devils, and Nico scored a hat trick, and he took my toque and he threw it on the ice.
Well, listen, especially if it was if I was him and it was my father's hat, 100% I would do it. You should be proud of him. This shouldn't be a question. This should be a pride factor that your son, who is a hockey fan, is keenly aware that, when the guy scores a hat trick, the chapeau comes off and it goes onto the ice. You should be proud that he is embracing the tradition of the hat trick.
But to wrap the story up, it was the best of both worlds because he's a little weak-armed from where he was. The hat did not make it onto the ice, and when he moved down at the end of the game to watch the end of the game, he found the hat.
That is something you should leave out of the story. I'll tell you that right now, okay? That he couldn't make it onto the ice.
Well, they were far away, dude.
Well, you also have to understand, listen.
And it was a toque, so very light.
Yeah, it's going to float, right? It can't spin with the brim. I understand. You have to understand too. The physics of this has to weigh in that while it is protocol, if your hat's not going to make it, it's just going to go to somebody else.
Yeah,
now, if
don't
that somebody
sacrifice
else
it.
is willing to throw that hat onto the ice, at least you've got yourself a relay. But no, if you can't make it, I don't know. Got to keep it.
All right. So now, before we get out of here and we enjoy our meals, either with or without Christmas salad, and for the longtime listeners, they know what we're talking about. What are you thankful in hockey, Dan, for?
So this is an exercise we were doing on NHL.com this week, obviously because it's Thanksgiving. And there's a number of things, obviously, I'm thankful. Well, number one, I'm thankful for the fact that I get to make a living doing this, right? So that's just personal, and that's number one. But I am so thankful, Sean, that we still get to see Alex Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby play at a high level. It's 2 decades now. 20 seasons. And Ovechkin is, before the injury, was scoring like he was 10 years younger. And Sidney Crosby, and I know the Penguins are still struggling, but Sidney Crosby is still elite. He's still so good. The perfect hockey player. And he continues to bring in, and he just scored his 600th goal. We never thought of Sidney Crosby as a goal scorer. He's got 600. He's one of 21 players in the league to do it. So I am so thankful that I still get to do that. I'm thankful that my kids get an opportunity to see Crosby and Ovechkin still going at a high level. That if you were 19 years old today, you might have been born when they just broke in, and you've gotten to see their whole careers. Like, it's amazing to me. Soak it in, right? Because we may never see this again. 2 guys coming at the same year, the same time, with expectations that are astronomical, almost unmeetable expectations. And they not only meet those expectations, they've blown past them years ago.
Yeah, no, it's going to be one of the great stories in the history of hockey, and we got to live it. A little self-serving here. I'm really thankful to the listeners of this podcast because this is the highlight of my week every week. And if we didn't have people listening to it, Bob Bender wouldn't let us do it anymore. So I'm really thankful that you all take the time to listen in whatever form you do, whether you're working out or driving or walking or sitting at your desk. Please keep listening. Tell your friends about it. But in the hockey world, what I'm thankful for is go look at the top of the leaderboard points-wise. There's a lot of new faces there, man. There's still the stalwarts, the Kucherovs, the Draisaitl's. McDavid's a little out of the picture. He's 11.
Coming.
He's coming in just like last year, right? Slow start, never mind. Here I come. But now you got guys like Dylan Strome. You got guys like Kaprizov. Just Reinhardt's tied for the lead in goals after making a name for himself last year. Just really like fresh faces and new stories. And it's a harbinger for how healthy the league is. And we just talked about Crosby and Ovechkin, and there's going to have to be a next. And there's a lot of people putting their foot forward and their hand up and saying, I want to be next. And I'm going to show you that I am next. And I'm not saying that any of these guys are going to be Crosby or Ovechkin, but they're going to be new limelights at the top of the marquee.
It's what makes this league great. It's what makes it exciting every single night. It's what makes the parity in the league fantastic, and it's what we're thankful for, Sean. That was very well said by you.
I try.
You try. Well, listen, this was a lot of fun. You go and enjoy your holiday. Thanksgiving is a time for, like you said, a lot of food, family, football, and then hockey on Friday. So enjoy your holiday. I hopefully will enjoy mine. All the listeners enjoy theirs if they're celebrating Thanksgiving here in the U.S. And, of course, the podcast is brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip. Enjoy the hockey.